Welcome to our Public Speaking and Debate 101 Showcase and Award Ceremony. I'm Dr. Carrie Morowski. I'm a senior instructor here with Capital Debate, and I'm from Roanoke, Virginia. During the school year, I am an assistant professor of communication studies at Roanoke College. I'll let Nick introduce himself.
Hi, I assisted Dr. Carrie this week with your students. During the school year, I am a high school speech and debate teacher at American Heritage, Delray Beach, Florida. So I'm excited to see your students showcase, and I'm sure you are too.
Yeah, this is a picture of our really awesome class this week. It was a small but mighty group, and we had a lot of fun. I'm going to spend this moment to talk about each one of them and give them appreciations of how hard they worked this week. I'll start with Sanjog. Sanjog is really unique. She came into class and told me she was an introvert, but I don't quite believe her after this week. Like, she was always willing to jump in. I mean, public speaking is a scary thing. It's one of the most scary things in the United States, ranking around 3 or 4 for like the worst fears in the United States. Some people would literally rather die than give a speech to the public. And so these kids are all especially brave, and Sanjog was always just willing to jump in, go for it. She had unique arguments and really practical solutions to even the extemporaneous speeches we did in class. Ethan is a really passionate speaker, and you'll see that today. He has a really unique topic, which after teaching Debate 101 and 201 most of the summer, I haven't heard some of the arguments that Ethan came up with. And so really thinking outside of the box, bringing his interest into camp, and we really appreciated that. Ishan's so full of energy. I love it. He's really a student who understands structure, how to structure a speech, how to structure his arguments, and really how to use his research to the fullest to make really strong arguments. And finally, Ravi. Ravi has one of the smoothest deliveries that I've ever heard. He has strong arguments. He was just a joy to have in class, always willing to jump in. One of those students who's kind of the full package, both a strong delivery and really strong argumentation. I want to offer this link. So we have the parent survey and the student survey. If you want to take a quick picture of it on your phone, I'll also send out these surveys in an email this later today or this weekend. But we really care about what you have to say. We really value your feedback and your voice. We want to know what worked well for Capital Debate, like what worked well for your student in the summer, and what could we do to make summer camp even better. So if you take just a couple minutes to fill that out, we would really appreciate it. I also want to just take a quick second and talk about the other kind of programs Capital Debate offers. If your student had a lot of fun this week, the next kind of logical step for them would be Debate 201, another week long, and that would be moving from a 4-minute speech, which would work as like an opening speech in a debate case, to learning about cross-examination, learning about refutation, learning about just the dynamics of what it means to debate someone else now that they have public speaking skills, now that they understand persuasive speaking, argument building, research, this type of thing. Capital Debate also has a club league, so throughout the entire school year, your student can also continue their debate journey. We also offer other programs, legal communication, business, interpersonal, STEM, if they really liked public speaking and some of the persuasive elements, and it kind of mixes or blends with some of their other academic interests. And this is just kind of a silly picture we took. We had a lot of fun this week, and we hope that students keep in touch. They have access to each other's Capital Debate emails, and so hopefully if they would like to stay in touch, they know where to find Nick and I in our Capital Debate email, and they can exchange other contact information. But if you have any questions about future Capital Debate camps or the Club League, you can always contact our Capital Debate team as well. Before we get started, I just want to briefly explain the format of what's going to happen today. So your students are giving 4-minute speeches followed by a question and answer section, because most public speaking engagements has that Q&A or that kind of engagement after. And so they will be kind of practicing those skills. And so the students will ask each other questions after they've delivered their 4-minute speech. The topics of our speech this week is on government regulation of social media. So the kind of resolution is government regulation of social media companies does more good than harm. Some students in their speech chose to agree with that statement, and some students chose to disagree with that statement. So we have both pro and con speeches for government regulation of social media, and each student really picked a unique topic with under that umbrella topic to really focus on, making each one of these speeches really unique. So that's kind of the format today. Nick and myself will not be offering feedback, though I will send an email with feedback to the parents either this afternoon or tomorrow. But really today is just about celebrating our students, how hard they worked, and it's all about them. And so without further ado, I will begin to introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is Sanjog, and she will be arguing for government regulation of social media.
Many of you guys probably use social media, but did you know there have been many incidences where people's information have been leaked to other companies or even countries? Privacy protection is extremely important. No one's information should be put out in the open. Considering that data rights are human rights, the US government needs to regulate social media to protect our citizens. Today, I will talk about the issue of our security and privacy being hacked and explain why the right to be forgotten should be the solution. Platforms such as TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook can misuse your information. The problem is our information is no longer ours. Private info can lead to a lot of financial ruins. People don't want things like credit card numbers, banking information, and etc. out in the internet. Any information should not be in the open because hackers can take advantage of that money. For example, you won't be able to buy a house or a car or any other necessities you might need. In 2014, Facebook created a quiz to know their users' personalities. As they took these quizzes, their data was collected. Only 305,000 people installed Facebook. 87 million people's information was leaked out just because of a quiz. Can you even imagine that? Private information is a big problem, especially with cyberbullying. For example, fake accounts using someone's information, name, photos, and maybe even personal contacts is a way to dehumanize them. Cyberbullying mostly targets young kids. Both kids and adults can deal with depression, develop anxiety, or even lose their lives to these fake accounts. According to Education Week, 1/5 of children experience bullying. No one should experience bullying for looking the way they do or acting the way they are. We should have rights to our photos, posts, and information. Now that we've discussed the issue of our information no longer belonging to us, I will offer a practical solution. Creating fake posts using information or catfishing is a breach of personal info and our photos. The right to be forgotten is a policy used all over the European Union. This policy gives citizens the rights to take down any data or content that they would not like on the internet. This means there is always a change in case something happens. During this process, it can make people feel better and more secure of knowing what's out there. Today, I've told you about the security and privacy risks. I've explained the right to be forgotten, how it's beneficial for our country. Since data rights are human rights, the government needs to step up and do something. Overall, the government should regulate social media. Regulation creates less problems, and having different policies could potentially change our country. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So when you were talking about your solution, if that were to come true, how would you see the US's influence on social media in the next 5 to 10 years?
So I definitely think that there will be a big change because, as I brought before, the right to be forgotten is a policy that they use in the European Union. And it'd be better over here because obviously our rates would be higher because our policy, we don't have this type of policy. And cyberbullying is so high that I think when if this policy ever comes into it, like comes in, it will help our country and help like the whole social media status. Any other questions?
I also have a question. Once the right to be forgotten is implemented in the US, how could they enforce it?
I definitely think, like for example, if you're like a child and you posted like a YouTube video, and you don't want it anymore because now you're going into college and you're applying, and that certain thing is like affecting your whole application, you'll have the right to take it down. Like it won't be saved anywhere, and your data will be like kept together. So I think a lot of people will follow it when it's enforced. So it'll just like naturally like be enforced. Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker today is Ethan, and he is arguing for government regulation of social media.
All right. So I know pretty much everyone loves to go on vacation, right? It's maybe because you get to spend time with your family, maybe because you get to go somewhere beautiful. But the sad truth is many stunning locations like the Galapagos have almost been destroyed because of one factor, the relationship between social media and tourism. Nearly 60% of American adults use social media. So as you can see, it's actually quite a big problem. And a way to help stop ecology deterioration from happening is having the government assist in regulating social media to protect the environment from landmark overcrowding and the collapse of some environments. So first, I'm going to discuss how destinations have been ruined by social media and online news articles. And second, I'm going to discuss how even minimal government regulation can actually help stop ecology deterioration. So first off, many destinations have been ruined by social media, and it can't be denied, right? Many recent news articles have described this problem. For example, a National Geographic article highlighted this problem directly and stated that social media can actually cause traveling to become more stressful and less enjoyable. And this is a problem because not only the land can get damaged, but according to the Washington Post, some places even keep animals in captivity, and obviously that hurts the animals. And a prime reason for having animals in captivity is, you guessed it, social media influence. An example of an animal getting harmed is a 4-year-old elephant named Mina in Thailand, specifically in Metaman Adventures. And this organization allows tourists to climb on elephants, take pictures of elephants, and watch elephants do tricks, such as throwing darts. And this doesn't seem like a problem until you realize that Metaman Adventures have to brutally train these animals. And near Metaman Adventures, there's actually an elephant sanctuary. And this elephant sanctuary seems very peaceful. You can see elephants eating here, lounging, or just running around and playing with each other. But no, it's not peaceful at all. Metaman Adventures actually owns the sanctuary. So Metaman Adventures sends elephants over for maybe a day and makes the elephants look like they're having a great time, but they're actually not. And an example of a piece of land getting destroyed is near Lake Elsinore, which is close to Los Angeles. During one weekend, 2 days, more than 66,000 people, yes, 66,000 people came here and trampled a field of poppies, and during 90-degree weather caused a gridlock and caused some people to even faint. So many people go to popular locations, and that may cause injury or even death. An example of this is a 24-year-old Australian student, and she was trying to create a very popular shot in Chultanga, but she lost her footing and plunged to her death. And as you can see, the problem is quite serious. It not only kills the environment, but it can also kill people. And some places that people travel are extremely dangerous, like the Himalayas And I'm sure most of us wouldn't travel to the Himalayas for pure enjoyment, because I'm sure it's not very enjoyable. So people go there to post images of themselves. And no, I'm not trying to get rid of social media. That would be impossible. But I'm trying to get the government to restrict at least social media a tiny bit. Maybe if they created a maximum amount of people allowed in a certain area, that could help preserve wildlife. And that brings me to my next point. Some people might disagree with government restricting social media because of the First Amendment, which states that people have the freedom of speech and the freedom of choice, right? And so they have the right to go wherever they want, and they feel like they can go wherever they want and say whatever they want. But that's not exactly what the First Amendment is saying. And you have to not only look at that, you have to look at other laws, such as ones that protect the environment. And obviously, it's common sense. You shouldn't risk your well-being for a photo that you're going to post on a virtual website. And so there's no doubt that the effects of social media on popular destinations can change the landscape dramatically. So government restricting the use of social media should be allowed, and the restriction will not completely restrict social media in an area, but it will at least restrict the amount of people that can go to an area, or restrict some parts of the area that are dangerous. And that can lead to people more enjoying nature more and having a more pure form of enjoyment. Are there any questions?
So, Ethan, do you really believe that being safer on social media will keep people away from these locations?
Right, yeah, I think that's a good question. I feel like if people are safer on social media, right, they choose the right places to go at the right time, they can actually be safer in real life. For example, the Chwotanga student, maybe if she decided to go to somewhere safer or not try to recreate such a dangerous shot, she would have not died. Yeah. Any other questions?
You mentioned the government regulating the amount of people. Were you talking about both on social media and the popular destination?
Oh, right. So I mentioned that, and I was referring to the government restricting people in the actual location. For example, I don't think that the government can actually restrict who goes on social media and when they go on social media, right? I feel like everyone should be allowed to go on if they want, if they're at a certain age. But the government should try to create some restrictions for the specific areas that have a large number of people going to them. All right. Well, thank you for listening to my speech.
Our next speaker is Ashan, and he is arguing against government regulation of social media.
Would you want the government to take down a post you made that was anti-government because they didn't agree with you? The government should not regulate what's being posted on social media because it is an infringement on our freedom of speech. First, I'll discuss the problem of the government interfering with social media and breaching our First Amendment. Then I'll offer a solution that has already proven effective. First, I will speak on how the government violating things on social media would breach our First Amendment made by our founding fathers all those years ago. The problem with the government regulations is that it violates the First Amendment. This is a problem because it would take away a basic right that all Americans have had for over 200 years. According to Niyam Yargi from Brookings.edu, social media companies are all private businesses with discretion over the content they wish to promote. In any effort by the government to influence what social media platforms promote risks violating the First Amendment. This is obviously a problem because the government would be breaking the amendment, which sets the U.S. apart from other countries. In 2018, Gianna Liu from South China Morning Post wrote, "Censorship efforts are mostly concentrated on Chinese content, which is the vast majority of content in Chinese cyberspace." In this article, she was talking about censorship in China, and if the US were to censor things on social media, they couldn't turn into a China which censors basically everything. Another reason why regulations are a problem is that it would create political bias. As I said earlier about China and its censorship, their censorship leads to political bias over Chinese content. For example, the majority of social medias that most people use, like YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, are all blocked in China. And anything the government doesn't want you to know about, for example, the Tiananmen Square massacre that happened over 20 years ago, you cannot be found anywhere on their internet or textbooks. John Wagner from the Washington Post in July 2020 wrote, President Trump on Wednesday said painting Black Lives Matter on New York's Fifth Avenue would be a symbol of hate. If Trump had the power to regulate what's being posted on social media, he could cancel the entire Black Lives Matter movement, which would be a massive blow to the Black community in the US. Even though the government regulating what's being posted on social media is a violation of our First Amendment, and could potentially influence political bias, there's still a solution. The solution to the problem is having each social media regulate what's being posted on their own platforms. Social media companies can stop cyberbullying and hate speech if they work with their users. From Facebook.com, when something gets reported to Facebook, we review it and remove anything that goes against the Facebook community standards. This is good because they work with their users to stop cyberbullying and hate speech, which is the big problem in our internet. They also work with their users to make sure that none of these things happen. Amy Scott from NPR wrote in 2019, the new feature uses artificial intelligence to screen content and notify users if their post may be harmful or offensive. Users will see a message. Are you sure you want to post this? They will have the option to remove or change the comment before anyone else is able to see it. In this article, she was talking about a new feature on Instagram that was made last year that allows Instagram to work with their users and make sure they stop from posting anything hateful or against their guidelines. This shows that social media has a means to self-regulate themselves with the help of their users without government interference. This type of regulation utilized by Facebook and several other media sites demonstrates that we can safely regulate our social media platforms without the government hindering our freedom of speech. Today, I talked about the problem with the government interfering with social media and offer a solution to this problem. The government should not regulate what's being posted on social media as it is an infringement on our freedom of speech. If the government not regulating what's being posted on social media, everyone would have their own opinion, and election would be fair. This is a big deal because the President of the United States is the most powerful person in the world, and putting the right person in office can save many lives. Does anybody have any questions?
Ashan, I really liked how you worded your solution, but do you think that, what do you think will happen if this actually takes place?
Well, social media companies are already working with their users to create a more safe place on their platforms. So if they continue to do this, the government will see no reason to interfere what's being posted on different platforms. Anybody else?
Great speech, by the way. I loved it. Can you tell us why you picked this topic?
I chose the topic of, well, I chose the con side because I personally think that freedom of speech is a big thing in the U.S. and some countries don't have that option for freedom of speech. So I thought that if the U.S. were to violate this, it would be a massive difference in the U.S. Thank you for listening to my speech.
Our last speaker today is Robbie, and he will be arguing for government regulation of social media. Can't hear you, Robbie.
According to April Glazer with NBC News, in August of 2019, there was a massacre in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio, where 31 people were killed. After this massacre, Walmarts near El Paso were threatened to be raided and attacked. A 13-year-old boy was even arrested for making a comment on social media that suggested he would attack one of these Walmarts. Dangerous threats like these are made every single day around the world on social media, and violence threats on social media are starting to get out of control. This is why social media should be regulated. If social media were to be regulated, it would heavily decrease the amount of violence that's rapidly growing around the world. If social media is regulated, violence threats will be detected on social media, and after they're detected, they'd be taken down. Also, authorities would be alerted in case the threats are actually carried out. First, how these threats can be prevented. Violence threats on social media nowadays are extremely common and dangerous. An example of this is terrorism on social media. According to the reality check team with BBC News, in March of 2019, there was a terrorist attack in New Zealand. In this attack, 50 people were killed in 17 minutes by a gunman who attacked 2 mosques. The whole attack was live streamed on Facebook. It was eventually taken down, but not before 4,000 people viewed it. Another reason why social media should be regulated is because of hate speech and hate crimes on social media that can lead to violence. According to Zachary Lobb with the Council on Foreign Relations, in June of 2019, Almost 1/3 of the world's population is on Facebook. With that amount of users, many of them are bound to promote hate. Examples of hate that's promoted is racism, sexism, homophobia, and more. That's on Facebook alone. Additionally, in 2015, there was a popular survey that went out by Pew Research Center, and 67% of people who took it in the US said people should be able to make statements that are offensive to minority groups publicly. Of the countries who took the survey, US was the highest percentage to agree. The second highest percent was Latin America, but they were still 17% lower than the US. This displays a huge hate problem around the world on social media, but especially in the US. And this could easily lead to more hate crime and violence. However, there is a solution to these public violence threats that are hate speech, hate crimes, and terrorism on social media. The solution is regulating social media. By regulating social media, it would detect, take down the public violence threats that are seen so often today. Regulation could be enforced by financially punishing social media companies who don't cooperate with the regulation. The government has the power to regulate social media companies, and this would heavily limit the amount of violence and hate speech that's seen on social media. Once the violence detected on social media, it would be taken down, and therefore the violence would not be promoted like it is today. Social media platforms who don't regulate for anti-violence will be fined heavily. According to reality check teams with BBC News, in February of 2020, other governments started punishing companies who don't follow the regulations. Examples of these countries are Australia, Germany, and the European Union. In those countries, there's a tight time frame not to delete the content that doesn't follow the regulation. If the content's not deleted, then the companies and individuals are fined heavily. All in all, social media should be regulated to stop these constant violence threats, and the threats would be detected to the authorities. Additionally, to enforce the regulations, social media companies and individuals who don't follow the regulations will be fined heavily. This shows that hate speech, hate crimes, and terrorism could easily be reduced by regulating social media. Regulating social media could even save lives that are in danger because of hate speech, hate crime, and terrorism that's seen on social media. Overall, these reasons support the idea that social media could be regulated and that it can be regulated to prevent a lot of violence and hate around the world. Any questions?
Yeah, great job. I was wondering, if your plan got implemented in the future, what do you think social media would be like?
I think if it was implemented in the future, there'd be a lot less violence that's seen today, such as terrorism, hate speech, and hate crime. Any other questions?
Yeah. If the government were to start regulating what's being posted on social media, what would be the first step they would take?
I think if the first step they would take would be first being able to detect the threats a lot more efficient than they do today. And then the next step would be for the companies to take down the posts that are promoting violence and terrorism. Thank you for listening to my speech.
Wow, our students just did a really awesome job. I'm really proud of all of our students this week. It's not an easy accomplishment to, after just 1 week, get up and deliver a polished 4-minute persuasive speech on a topic that they didn't know much about at the beginning of the week. And to speak extemporaneously on top of that, well, just having minimal notes in front of them is such an accomplishment. It's such a scary thing. And so I really hope that you get to celebrate all of your students' accomplishments this week and this weekend. Thank you so much for spending your week with Capital Debate. We really enjoyed working with your students, and we hope to see you back, and we hope that you enjoy your weekend. And thanks so much to all my students. We had fun.